Hello, my name is Jaden Cinco, and believe it or not, this is like the fourth take, but I'm gonna be doing 13 Reasons Why, talking about it for my honors English class for 9th grade. And I'm using my paper because I'm not gonna be able to remember everything off the top of my head, but like I said, the novel is called 13 Reasons Why by J. Asher. It's a teen drama. It has some mystery, tragedy. It's a pretty sad book, so if you're going to read it, make sure you look at the trigger warnings because there's a lot to look at. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars because it's a good book. Alright, I like the story, I like the characters, but I feel like there could have been more to add to it, and it could have been my favorite if we like dove into the characters a little bit more, kind of like the show does, because in the show we see more of the characters, which I kind of wish is what we did in the book. Because I feel like it could have been longer if there was more about the characters. But 13 Reasons Why, it takes place in a fictional town called Crestmont in California. And in the book there's a lot of mentions of like the theater, the Crestmont Theater, the high school, like all those places that say, oh yeah, well this is Crestmont. That's kind of how I figured it out. And also the internet, because I'm kind of, yeah. But the plot is that Clay Jensen, he's a seemingly plain teenage boy. He goes to school, he gets good grades, he doesn't go to parties, he's kind of boring if you ask me. But he receives these tapes from a girl in his class named Hannah Baker who has killed herself. And in these tapes there's stories explaining the reasons why she's killed herself and the people who've allegedly caused her death. But there's, in the story, Clay follows each of the tapes and he goes to the mentioned locations like Rosie's Diner, the park, Eisenhower Park, Tyler's house. He goes to all these different areas and things that are mentioned in the story after Hannah committed the suicide. After finishing the tapes, Clay follows Hannah's instructions and mails them to the next person on the list, and he's filled with grief and trauma, as anyone would be if they got tapes from a dead girl. The characters are there. Like I said, I would love if we got more on these characters like we did in the show. Clay, he's the protagonist. He cared a lot for Hannah and he had feelings for her, but he was scared to admit those feelings because of her reputation and the rumors that spread around her. He's a nice guy. He's what would be borderline nice guy. Justin is, he's something. He spread sex rumors about him and Hannah. He was a popular jock. He dated Hannah for about like a month, and he was a jerk. We don't like Justin. Jessica, she used to be Hannah's best friend. She slapped her after the Who's Hot, Who's Not list because Jessica thought that Hannah was doing something with Alex, and that's why they broke up. She ditched her very early on in their friendship. They were friends for a little while, and then Jessica just kind of was like, alright, whatever. And they weren't friends anymore. Alex, he put Hannah on the Hot or Not list as having the best ass in the freshman class, which was a big starter to a lot of the things that happened to Hannah, especially Jessica slapping her as one of the first, and I'll get into other stuff later. He was her ex-friend. They used to hang out around Monet's, her, Jessica, and Alex. He dated Jessica, and when they broke up, that's why the Hot or Not list started going out. Bryce, he's also something. I'll talk more about him later, but this is just synopsis right now. He raped Jessica and sort of Hannah. She mentions that it's not, but it is rape. It's rape. He was a terrible person. Let's admit that. He was a terrible person. He's the typical jock, you know, the jocks at school that you see every day. He's mean, he's cruel, he makes terrible jokes about people that aren't funny. He's a typical jock. Tyler, Peeping Tom, we all know about those. He took creepy pictures of Hannah and made her feel unsafe. and Courtney helped her catch him in the one scene, which was, like, good of Courtney. Okay, good job, Courtney. But also, Courtney. Jenny, she is a popular cheerleader. She left Hannah after knocking down the stop sign, and she caused the death of one of the students at the high school because of knocking down the stop sign. There was a crash, and one of the students from their school ended up dead. Courtney, talking about her now, manipulated Hannah into being friends with her. Then she started rumors. Courtney is an interesting character. I think the way that they portrayed her in the show was a lot more interesting than in the book, because she's just kind of like, oh yeah, she's really shallow. But in the show, it was a lot more on her, and I liked that. Ryan, he used to be Hannah's friend. He took her to these, like, poetry things and poetry meetings and stuff, and she wrote this poem that kind of expressed all of her feelings, and Ryan took it upon himself to post it onto one of the school websites, and it betrayed her trust, and people made fun of her for that poem, so she felt like her feelings weren't validated. Zach, again, is more interesting in the show. There's a lot of characters in the book that are more interesting in the show, and I watched the show before I read the book, which is kind of why I was so interested to read the book and get to know the characters in the book. But then I read the book and I was like, the characters aren't that well explained. It's just like, oh yeah, jerk, 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 jerk 1, jerk 2, jerk 3. It was like, which I'm not saying they weren't jerks. Some of them were very, very bad people. But I just feel like in the show, when they explain more about each character, more about who they are and why they're like that, it kind of made it more realistic. I don't know. This is like one of those rare cases of, oh, I think the show is better. But yeah, Zach, they were doing like these compliment letters and bags for one of the classes, and Zach was taking Hannah's letters out of her bag, made her upset, betrayed her trust. Marcus. Oh my god. So they were doing the oh my dollar Valentine like lists or whatever. They filled out a survey of what they're like, and then whoever was on their list, like, it had their number on it and they can ask them out on a date. So Marcus asked Hannah out on a date and originally was thinking of standing her up because he thought they were kidding. That should have been the first red flag, but then he came because he was like, oh, well, maybe she didn't think I was kidding. So then he came, and, you know, he was there, and they were having a good time, they were laughing, and then he tried to grab her thigh, which she was not. It's not what it was. She was not happy about that, so she got upset, and he called her a tease after she left, and Hannah was very convinced that, like, the rumors about her were the reason, which they probably were. The last character, this is an interesting one, Tony. He's one of my favorites, both in the show and the movie, mainly because he's not one-dimensional, like a lot of the other ones are. Like, Clay and Tony are the two that we see the most of in the book, and they're the most two-dimensional, Tony more than Clay, which I think is kind of funny because usually the main character would be like the one that you're like, oh yeah, well, they changed. I think it's more Tony, mainly because, like, he is so, his character just completely interests me. Like, the way that he knew, like, after he knew, he was like, I picked up on the signs and stuff. My initial thought was, doesn't he feel any remorse, like, while I was reading? And then I got to that part, and when he was talking with Clay in the car, and he's like, well, like, I saw the signs, and I feel really bad, and it was like, it makes you feel bad, even though you know that he kind of did a shitty thing by, like, listening to the tapes and not immediately going to Hannah's parents or someone, 911. He just listened to them and was like, oh my god, am I on here? Like, it's so self-centered. But then when she's dead, he's like, oh shit, I should have, like, paid more attention. It's like, yeah, you should have. Sorry, that's a rant, but Tony is so, I love Tony. I love and hate Tony. I could go on about Tony for hours, but we're gonna go into themes now. So regret is a huge theme in this book. Clay regrets not being there for Hannah when she was at her lowest and being afraid to love her. I'm sure lots of the other characters felt regret as well when they listened to their tapes. Some of them probably not. Some of them were probably angry. But the regret really shone through. Again, like I said in the show, we see that regret and the guilt and how it affects the characters other than Clay. So I like that again in the show. The conflicts in the book, a lot of the conflicts have to do with Clay's own feelings, I thought. He cared very deeply for Hannah and her death made him upset, but the tapes just threw him, like, completely off the wire. Tony's confession of being in charge of the tapes was another blow in Clay's direction. Clay's feelings drive the story, and the actions taken, like Jenny being nailed to the tapes. Which I think Clay, like, his realization that these people need to, like, own up for what they did, like he did with his own tape, I liked that. I thought that was a good, yeah, that's a good Clay moment. That was good. The point of view, Clay plays the point of a reason in Hannah's tapes, but he was only on them because Hannah wanted to apologize and tell him her story. Clay starts out as a plain guy, but Hannah's tapes really affect him and turn him into a more interesting character. Which I semi-agree with. I kind of wrote this, like, really late at night, so I semi-agree with this, but I think, like, Clay's pretty plain throughout the entire thing. I think his, like, final last 3 or 4 pages Clay, that was the Clay that I liked. But the rest of the book, I was just kind of like, okay, he's there. He's there. It's really it. The stylistic features I loved in this book, like the pause, the play, fast forward buttons, like that were in between all the parts where, like, Clay and Hannah were talking, and when he paused the Walkman to, like, his mom was calling and he had to pause, stuff like that. And it really helps organize it in a way that makes it, like, pleasing for me, because if Jay Asher didn't do that, it'd be a lot harder to tell, like, what was happening and when he stopped and when he didn't. I mean, he could write it, but, like, if you're just skimming through, like, stuff like that can really help organize it, as well as the chapters being marked by tape. That is the best thing that Jay Asher could ever do, marking it by tape inside. Because while I was looking at it, because I have an online copy, because I don't own a copy, and I read the library version a little bit ago, but again, I don't have that copy, so I used an online version, a PDF, and it was a lot easier when I looked at the chapters being as cassette 1 side B or cassette 2 side A, like stuff like that. It was a lot easier to tell what was going on. My favorite quote in the book was, "No one knows for certain how much impact they have on the lives of other people," on page 156. A lot of Hannah's feelings and thoughts I resonate with, because I used to struggle with suicidal ideology, and I know there's controversy around the book saying that Hannah doesn't portray suicide the right way, which I feel is kind of wrong, because there's no right or wrong way to portray suicide. Like I said, I dealt with suicidal ideology, and yes, I connected with some of Hannah's feelings and some of her thoughts, but not everything was the exact same. Like with suicide, not everything is the exact same between each person, which I think a lot of people who don't experience it and who read the book are like, oh, well, she's not like this person that I know that committed suicide, so she's a bad portrayal. I think Hannah is a perfect portrayal of teenage hurt and hate and angst and just everything in between, and how hard that can affect the life of somebody who's growing up, who's being told that they need to grow up completely but also stay a child, because it's hard. It's really hard. And her struggle and her anger is completely justified and really fits the vibe of the story and really helps people like me who struggled with it resonate with someone. And I feel like Jay Asher really hit home with that. that quote is perfect and powerful, and I loved it. Why I liked or disliked the book. The message in this book is very, very nice. Like I just said, I just went on a whole tangent about it. The writing is beautiful. I love Hannah's like quick, witty responses to everything, and like I said, he definitely really hits home in the way that a teenager struggles in life, and like how they would talk about their feelings if it was just them. And for people who struggle with bullying and the things that Hannah went through, it really shows them that they're not alone in how they feel when they read the book. Even if Hannah is a fictional character, even if she is made up, like I said, Jay Asher did a really good job of hitting home with people who struggle. Recommendation. I really like this book. It's an important read for young adults because it shows like how their actions affect other people, which I think is a big lesson that teenagers need to be learning in this day and age. The empathy that it like instills in people is perfect. Like I said, every teenager should read this book, and every young adult, every elderly person. Probably not children. It's not a good idea for children to read it when they're really young, but when they get older, to know how much what they say and what they do affects other people. It's really important to be kind and to be nice to others because, like Hannah said, you never know how much your words, how much your actions impact other people. But yeah, that was my explanation of 13 Reasons Why by Jay Asher. Thank you for listening, and this is Jaden signing out.